So we are back. And we pick up where we left off with the composition of the Request Oversight Committee, or the ROC, the ROC. The current members are Tom Sawatsky, CPA, Committee Chair, Brian Thomas, CPA, and Brooke Stegmeyer, CPA. And in keeping with what we did with the last committee, I'm going to ask if all the current members wish to continue.
This is Tom. I'm happy to continue, and unless somebody wants to boot me, I'm happy to continue as the chair.
Brian Thomas appreciates Tom's volunteerism, and I'll continue as a member.
Thank you, Brian. Brooke?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, maybe I can run the roll to make sure that we do have board members back.
Please do.
I see yourself. I heard Tom, I heard Brian. So I will just ask, Jackie, are you present and on the line?
Yep, I'm here.
Mark, have you returned and present or on the line?
I am here. I'm here.
Thank you. Kate?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Brooke?
Brooke seems to be having connectivity problems. I don't see her on the roster. Do you see her on the roster?
I see her there. Brooke, are you on mute?
Looks like she's not. Oh, she's back maybe.
I guess there's 3 more. Okay, I see.
Was it appropriate if she's not here to tell her that she's a chair? Congratulations.
I don't think I'm going to go that far. Nice try, Tom. I think I'm going to try the friendlier approach of just taking it on assumption, if she's not here, that she's willing to continue because she has not indicated any desire to roll off. And unless anybody else would like to serve on the ROC, I would suggest that we just consider the slate to be yourself, Brian, and Brooke, with yourself continuing as chair. And if later Brooke has any desire to be chair, I'll let you sort it out. So with that, then I guess I propose that we have the ROC continue, the current ROC committee members to continue in their respective roles for the coming year. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Great. So in that case, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. And all opposed, say nay. All who wish to abstain, please say abstain. So it is unanimously resolved that the ROC will continue with its current composition and chair.
Rajiv, I just got a hold of Brooke and she's having some technical issues, but she will continue as a member of this.
Wonderful. Our cup runneth over. All right, moving on to the Scholarship Oversight Committee, SOC. Current members: Brian Thomas is the Distinguished Committee Chair. Jackie Miucci is CPA, is a member, and Kate Dixon, who is a public member, is also a member of the SOC, and Brian, of course, is a CPA member. So that's the current committee. And do the committee members do you give your consent to continue?
So Brian Thomas.
Yes, I do.
Brian Thomas, I hasten to add that you're in error. I'm not the chair. So if Kate or Jackie or others would want to be that, I defer.
I I see. The minutes or my document here lists you as the committee chair. I stand corrected because you would know better whether you are the chair or not. So we have the 3 members, and then we will ask you to elect a chair among yourselves. So Brian Thomas, Jackie Mucci, Kate Dixon, are you all willing to continue?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. I hear 3 yeses. Do any other board members wish to throw their hat in the ring? Do we have an election? All right, seeing the plethora of demand for the seats, I move that the Scholarship Oversight Committee be constituted of Brian Thomas, Jackie Mucci, and Kate Dixon. I'm sorry, Kate. And we need a chair. So would one of you volunteer to be the distinguished chair of this all-important committee?
I
I'm
will.
going to politely decline since I'm already on the executive committee and chairing the PROC. So I would happily allow Kate or Brian to step up.
There you go. So it's between Kate and Brian. Who's going to propose the other person as the chair?
Kate, I heard you stepping in, I think.
Well, I was gonna say, Brian, if you want to, you know, have it, that's fine. And if you would like me to go ahead and take it, I'm fine with that as well.
Oh, please, please, please do. I've been the chair and I could do it, but I think it's a great opportunity and it's a great involvement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we now have clarity. Kate Dixon, public member, will be the chair. Brian Thomas and Jackie Mucci, CPA members, will be the members of the committee, and that is the proposed Scholarship Oversight Committee. May I have a second, please?
This is Mark. I have a question. Do we really need to vote on committees? I mean, we have to vote elect officers.
Oh, well, then let's not vote. Let's move on. That's the committee. I declare so. By the power of the gavel,
So much for
by the power of the
democracy.
gavel, I dispense with the vote and declare the committee appointed. Thank you, Mark. That is extraordinary leadership from a former chair for streamlining our processes even further. All right, so now I come to the happiest part of appointing task forces and committees, which is to suggest to the board that in light of Colleen Conrad's presentation, the CPA exam remote proctoring task force, whose current members are myself, public member as the committee chair, and Brian Thomas, CPA, be disbanded for the time being till such time as that initiative resumes, because we will not have anything to report, and there's nothing worse in the world than having a task force with no task.
I heartily agree.
So not having a task force, I suggest we disband the CPA exam remote proctoring task force till such time as it is necessary to resuscitate it. Any comments, thoughts?
Perfect. And since it's a task force, we might not even have to vote on that happening.
Precisely. So but we have reduced the body count by 1, which for a bureaucracy is a very desirable goal. All right. So having then determined the composition of our 3 committees, the PROC, the ROC, and the SOC, we can now move on to item 8 on our agenda. We've already dispensed with item 7. So moving on to item 8 of the agenda, the board had posed a question. There is a lengthy history behind this. We had posed a question to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General's formal opinion, AGO 2021 number 5, is available in pages 29 to 32 of the meeting materials. And I'm going to invite Dave Tuyo, our Executive Director, and Mark Hugh, who has been working with Dave to shepherd this entire process and knows much more about it than I do, to kindly provide a summary and lead the discussion on this opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just start real briefly, but I do want to note that Brooke in the chat has said she may not be able to speak, but she can hear everybody. So she does apologize for technical troubles. But I wanted to share that with you and the rest of the group. So real briefly on my part, the board received Attorney General's Office opinion number 2021, number 5, as their numbering system goes. This is your first board meeting since this opinion came out. So I'm sure that you will want to have some discussion. I've thought about how to tee this up for Mark. And I think that I will simply say that this predates my time as executive director. I've since become familiar with it. However, I think that as a result of the opinion coming out, staff is simply will be presenting some housekeeping edits to board policy 2020 number 2 for our numbering system. And that's in your packet immediately following the opinion. But I think Mark, who was chair at the time this question was submitted, is probably the best person to kind of delve into the beginning of it and tee it up for discussion by the rest of the board. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. A little bit of background regarding this. Those who are on the board knew we had a complaint about a government employee, and based on privileged and confidential advice from the Attorney General's office, we dismissed that complaint. And the advice we got from the Attorney General's office, it was kind of more nuanced than I'd always thought the statute implied. So to inform the licensees and the public, we created this board policy. And this board policy was created and based upon this privileged and confidential advice that we got from the Attorney General's office. And so we created the board policy based on that advice, and we decided at the time that we adopted it to also request a formal opinion from the Attorney General. And really the goal in requesting the formal opinion from the Attorney General's office, not that we expected any surprises, but all the advice we'd gotten from the Attorney General's office was privileged and confidential. So we wanted a shareable public document from our trusted advisor, the Attorney General's office, that kind of agreed with the confidential and privileged advice that we're being given. So we now have that. And it obviously agrees with the prior advice we have been given by the Attorney General's office. When we adopted this policy, we said, well, we'll wait till the opinion comes back, and then we'll kind of revisit the policy and figure out what are the next steps. So we're at that point to kind of determine, what is next? Do we retain, revoke, or the amend policy? There's a very small proposed amendment in the one in the outline. I have another suggestion maybe for another amendment that doesn't include the outline. We could create a rule. If we disagreed, we could go to the legislature with agency request legislation. I think it's too late though for this next session to do agency request legislation. Dave, is that correct?
You are correct. Agency request legislation from a state agency to go forward with that requires it to go through the governor's office and receive their approval. That is in September of every year. The actual date may change within that month, but it is in September annually.
Okay, thank you. So that's really what we need to discuss. I mean, what do we want to do? What would be next? Regarding the opinion, I was a little bit surprised when it came out by the headers. The headers kind of talk about state auditor's office. We didn't ask about the state auditor's office, so the headers were a little surprising. And we kind of already asked, can we, get those headers changed? And I don't think that's going to be possible. But as a reminder, we spent a lot of time on this issue. And if you look at historical averages, this is a once in a decade issue. So this is a once in a decade issue. This type of complaint that came in, we had one about a decade ago, a similar complaint that was also dismissed. We do discipline government employees for things within our authority. For example, I was just the hearing officer on a BAP hearing for an employee of a state agency who did not provide adequate documentation for CPE renewal. And the staff denied that renewal. I upheld it, and they went into the reinstatement process. But this type of complaint is really a once in a decade issue, and we spent lots of time on it. So that's really the point of the background, really have a discussion about, what's next, really, what do we want to do next? And in the outline, there's a proposed amendment to the policy, just to kind of incorporate the Attorney General's opinion. My suggested proposed amendment, which I would like to discuss, is there is one additional amendment to the board policy. The last paragraph, which reads, and I'll read it, says this exception is not unique to Washington, renewing the legislative history of RCW 1804-35012. It is Washington law because the legislature adopted it from the Uniform Accountancy Act, the national model licensing law developed to provide a uniform approach to regulation in the accounting profession. Currently, 26 states, including Washington, have adopted similar exceptions. I'd like to, if we revise this and keep this, I'd like to remove that paragraph. It really doesn't impact what the Attorney General said, what other states don't matter. And if you look at the Uniform Accountancy Act, it does have restrictions, but ours are a little broader than the ones in the Uniform Accountancy Act, the ones that are in Washington law. The Uniform Accountancy Act, if you look at the whatever we call it, exceptions for government employees, it really is on firm licensing, right? Under the Uniform Accountancy Act, firms need to be licensed to issue like reports and attest work. There's an exception for government employees for doing that. So it's an exception to firm licensing rules. And there's an exception to allowing them to use title use. So what's in the Uniform Accountancy Act is a little different from our statute. So my suggestion would be to strike that last paragraph. But no other changes.
Majid, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Rajiv.
Sorry. Thank you very much for that excellent summary, Mark, and for ending with the fine tooth comb that I know you for. That sentence indeed is something we can consider. Is it the entire paragraph that is catching your attention? Because it is explanatory in a sense, and it's not a bad thing to have it per se. But if in the second sentence, we were to change it to it is in Washington law, because the legislature adopted it from the Uniform Accountancy Act, if we were to strike that out and replace it with something along the lines that it was modeled by the legislature on the provisions of the Uniform Accountancy Act, would that accommodate the small deviations that you were talking about?
It may be simpler to accomplish what you want, Rajiv, to just strike that last sentence that reads, currently 26 states, including Washington, have adopted similar exceptions. It is in Washington law because of the Uniform Accountancy Act. Our exception is a little more dissimilar than the Uniform Accountancy Act.
Right, that's why I'm suggesting we treat it as modeled it on. We can leave it everything instead of adopted. We say,
change adopted to modeled it upon the Uniform Accountancy Act.
And then we strike the last sentence.
Yeah.
Because I do like this sort of broad context. It may be only because I'm a professor, but it gives my students, I think, a lot of insight into how the law is a living thing. The regulations are a living thing, and that they are constantly revised, keeping in mind the needs. They are not just impersonal things. They're living, breathing things. So I think that
that would add clarity. That would add a lot of clarity. Striking the last sentence that starts currently 26 states, And then the language adopted it from would be changed to modeled upon Uniform Accountancy Act.
Thank you, Mark.
That add more clarity and keep the background.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the board for comments. I have in the chat a request for from Mr. Ken Smith, Dr. Ken Smith, to be recognized, and he has spoken to us before on that topic. With all respect, I will ask Dr. Smith to kindly hold his remarks till the end of our session so we can get through the other agenda items and then hear his comments. So with that, I'm going to open it up for board discussion only right now. And I see Brian has his hand up, and there's somebody else who has their hand up. But Brian, why don't you go first, since my computer lists you first?
Okay. I'd like to preface this by saying I'm not making a judgment on the law. I'm leaving that to the lawmakers, but in the interest of making the policy consistent with the interpretation we received from the AG's office. Third paragraph under guiding principles, second line, the word I believe may should be changed to does. So the board does not have the authority, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a good point. Dave, did you have, or Bruce, did you have any comments on Brian's proposed modification? And Tom, I see your hand up now, and I will call on you next. But I would like to bring in Bruce and Dave at this point, please.
I would defer to Bruce on that, specifically because it is coming from the AG opinion number 5. Bruce?
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right paragraph then, which, so could you repeat the page and paragraph number again?
Yes, this is on page 33 of the docket. It is on under the second section, bold font guiding principles. It is the 3rd paragraph of that section. And
okay.
it's the second sentence.
Yeah, I found it now. I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay, so that's the other amendment that is being proposed to this language. Both are minor and do not in any substantive way change that, change the substance of what we're trying to accomplish here. So with that, then let me recognize Tom to make his comment, please.
Hey, thanks, Rajiv. So I appreciate those changes. I think they make great sense. Changing a may to does makes me nervous when I still look back at the opinion and the brief answer starts with the 2 words, probably not, with probably in there. But if council is comfortable changing it to, I feel like that's what we're saying, is that we do not have that authority based upon this opinion. But the real reason I raised my hand was I just want to say that I like this approach 1,000 times better than, when I first came on the board a couple of years ago, and we were still relying on the, privileged and confidential conversations from council. We're doing the work of the people. I think it should be in the public eye, and I think this is 1,000 times better. This is the right approach to do it. This is the opinion on which we're relying. Here's why, and I think it needs to be in the light of day. So thanks very much. I think it's terrific, and I think the amendments proposed are great.
Thank you, Tom. You have eloquently summarized my feelings as well. Any other board members wishing to speak on this? Okay, so then, subject to the proposed modifications, which I hope you're good with, Dave, I'd like to hear from the executive director about the 2 modifications that have been proposed. One is to sentence 2 of paragraph 3, produced on page 33, striking the may out and replacing it with does. And then on the second amendment is to change the second sentence of the last paragraph, adopted it from to modeled it upon, and striking the last sentence of that paragraph. Dave, are you comfortable with those changes?
A couple of comments. Yes, I am comfortable with those changes. Just for the attendees, what we're speaking of is really just an amendment to board policy, which can be amended in the future as well. So should board decide or there be other action, we can always amend this policy later. Having said that, I will point out, Mr. Chair, that there is a comment in the chat that says the two-word short answer from the Attorney General's opinion, probably not, is consistent with the currency policy may versus does not. And that is origin for my prior comment, which is we can amend this policy at a later date should you choose. Other than that, I'm comfortable with current policy, with changes as is. But again, if would defer to Bruce, and if Bruce is okay with that, I am as well.
Well, I do have a question before Bruce, you opine. My question is are we bound to buy? Probably not. The board can decide we don't want to bite this off. And we indicate our decision to not bite this off and not pursue this further and devote board attention and resources to this by simply saying, we do not believe. The board policy is a statement of the board's position. So I am very comfortable if it's acceptable to simply say does not. A definitive answer for a board policy is infinitely preferable to a tentative answer, which doesn't really settle anything. If we want to settle this, and as Tom has said, we're settling this issue for now. Should circumstances change, as Dave has pointed out, we can come back and change it. But I'm all in favor of having a definitive position, which is what I like about what Brian has suggested. So with that, Bruce, do you think that it is acceptable for us to say does?
Yes, and as you've been explaining, the board policy, it has a little different function than something like an Attorney General formal opinion, because it's the board's announcement of how it's going, how it's interpreted the law, and how it's going to proceed further in terms of enforcement actions and how it views its jurisdiction and so forth. So it appears that the board has been viewing this as it does not have all along. And so, and with the confirmation of its views, expressing the formal opinion that it could make that language changes to make it more clear. But it's really, it's just a kind of a discretionary drafting decision, but it does carry that the announcement to the world of how the board is going to view this and go forward. And of course, the reason probably that the formal opinion, and I wasn't part of producing that, it's from Solicitor General Division of our office, but the reason it's probably couched somewhat conditionally like that is because, you know, attorneys are pretty much trained not to give guarantees about the potential outcome of litigation in court. And that's just kind of unwise because unexpected things can always happen. So that's why the sort of tentative language was used rather than a really definitive. You know, when I give legal advice, I will try to give option-based advice, evaluate the risks, the likelihood, the percentages, even maybe sometimes of different kinds of results. So that's all I got to say about that right now.
Thank you, Bruce, for that clarification. And that is the board's job. It's our job to take a position, in my view, and we should be clear-throated about it. And that's what I really liked about Brian's comment, that let's just settle this. And then if there are issues, as Dave has pointed out, we can come back. But I do appreciate, along with Tom, the position that we are very clear about what we are telling the public. Regulators should not be mealy-mouthed to the extent possible. And that's the difference, as Bruce has pointed out, between what we do as a board and what our legal advisors or the Attorney General tells us. I see Brian's hand is still up. Brian, you have the floor. Or BT, whoever DT is. I'm trying to look. Oh, yes, it
Yeah.
is right.
I'll lower it. I didn't lower it.
Okay, all right. And there is one more comment in chat, I believe. Okay, I don't see any more comments. So with that, then I invite any further conversation. Otherwise, I'll put the motion up to vote, subject to those modifications. And Dave, did you have any reaction?
No, I think that you've kind of set the stage for the public to be able to address or possibly suggest other courses of actions at the end of this. During the public portion of this meeting, this strictly is really just dealing with the policy piece of it. So I don't have anything other to add at this point.
Okay, and Mr. Smith points out in the chat that with respect, the prior practice of ACB has been to take public comment on agenda items while they are being discussed. That is very true, but we have gone through a long process. The reason I'm departing from whatever is being cited as possible precedent is that we have been through an exhaustive process. We have consulted our lawyers, and we have, the executive committee has deliberated upon this. We have had conversations within the board. And I believe that it is my sense, or rather, my sense is, and I believe I'm pretty much on the money on this, is that the board as a whole is comfortable taking this position. So at this point, this is not really an item on which we are contemplating a lot of deliberation. It is a very simple policy adoption vote. And that's the reason I'm deferring public comment on it. Because as we have all pointed out, we can always, if we're given sufficiently persuasive arguments, come back and revisit this. So with that, I'm making a ruling that public comment section is the time to take Mr. Smith's comments. And now I'm going to ask, does the board wish to revise, retain, or retire this policy as reworded? I need a second on this motion.
Second, from Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All right, all board members in favor of retaining the policy with the modifications proposed, please say aye.
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 Aye. Do we have all the votes in person?
I think so. My system kind of froze up there. I didn't hear you for a minute.
Oh, do you have all the members' votes recorded? I just wanted to do that, assure that before we move on.
Yes.
Rajid, you have to go for the nays and abstains.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. All those who are opposed to the adoption of this policy as revised, please say nay. All those who wish to abstain from voting on this policy adoption, please say abstain. Okay, the policy is adopted by unanimous consent. Moving on, we have the legal counsel's report. So I'm going to turn it over to Bruce for that part.
Well, this is a timing agenda standing item. If I had something to report to you all about litigation results that affected the Board of Accountancy or changes with respect to public records or new case law with respect to public records or the Open Public Meetings Act or so on, I would report them out. But I don't have anything to report this meeting.
Thank you very much, Bruce. We appreciate all that you do, and it is good to have a solid legal mind guiding us in our deliberations. So we very, very much appreciate your availability and you being of counsel to us. With that, then let's move on to the Executive Director's report. And dear Executive Director Trujillo, the microphone is now yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be quick. The report's written in your packet, pages 35 through 37. I do have to, I guess, say a mulligan, so to speak. Apparently I was making up numbers. So if you will look at my report under the budget portion, you will see a number that is 2,9094,870. That is not the correct number. And so what I would like to do is clean this up so that it is, and we'll repost it as corrected, and then refer to it in the meeting minutes. I will just close out the budget status report by saying that fiscal year started July 1st, 2021. So we don't have too much data at the time that this report was prepared. But I would just say that as of right now, we are operating normally, where we are spending just a little bit more than we're taking in. That will change as renewals come about. But as of October 26th, so this is even more recent than when I originally prepared this portion of the report. We're looking at a projected fund balance at the end of the 2-year fiscal year at about 3.1 million. So we'll come back next board meeting with more data for you to look at. I just ask you to give me a little, allow me a little forgiveness, clean this up, and then repost as fixed. There's some items that I really want to just bring to your attention. Because they do have impact to us and will have impact to us. And so the first is non-compliance with laws and regulations, no clause. So this, and I'm just going to, for those who may not be on the, or maybe on the meeting by phone, I'm just going to read this to you. In short, CPAs are prohibited from divulging client or employer information without consent, yet in certain circumstances. If the CPA becomes aware of a client's non-compliance with laws and rules, the established no-CLAR framework may require such disclosure. This latest iteration has been in effect since June of 2017. And effect is, we'll say, a loose term. Additionally, in January of this year, the AICPA's Auditing and Standards Board voted to expose for public comment a proposed statement on auditing standards. And this would be called Communication with Predecessor Auditor Regarding Fraud and Non-Compliance with Laws and Regulations. This exposure draft is to align with the Professional Ethics Executive Committee's exposure and propose revisions to the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct regarding no-CLAR. So I've never had my own practice. And so I do know that CPAs in practice are confronted with this frequently. And I'm looking forward to the AICP, to the exposure draft coming out. But I do want to bring awareness to this. We're already looking at our own board rules to see if modification is needed to clearly say disclosure is allowed when complying with professional standards. With that, Mr. Chair, before moving on to peer review, are there any questions or comments from board members?
Sorry, Rajiv, this is Tom. I just want to say I saw your note in there about Brooke, and I just thought that was wonderful, and congratulations to Brooke.
Oh, thank you. I think that was, she's definitely deserving of recognition.
Yes, I want to echo that. I was going to bring that up, but thanks, Tom, for bringing that up. Brooke, hearty round of applause to you from all your colleagues on the board. We're very proud of you and the extraordinary work that you do as a leader, and also your leadership on the board. So very well deserved indeed. On no-CLAR, this is a really important issue, and I myself, just last night I was part of a case discussion with a group of students about some very sticky no-CLAR issues. I've not practiced in the United States, but I have practiced. I had my own firm before I came to the U.S. to transition my career into academia. And I do think that these are some very important issues. And as the social sort of topography is shifting under our feet, The profession is changing. We have multiple constituencies to report to, and the public's expectation is changing. Certainly from my vantage point as a public member and as an educator, I think this is a very important issue. So I just want to commend you, Dave, for bringing our attention to it. I'm sure those of our members who are in practice are also quite aware of this. Were you thinking that this might be something on which we might want to have a conversation at some point?
We could tee it up for a future board meeting. I do believe that we have some licensees in our state that are fairly engaged with this topic. And that might be something we can talk about at executive committee meeting time sometime.
Good. So with that additional context, hopefully the board and the public will know that we are staying engaged on this issue. The other board members also can feel free to reach out to you or to me, and we can gauge interest in this topic as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next topic that is near and dear to all of our hearts, peer review. ASCPA's peer review program was established many years ago for the purpose of improving the quality of accounting, auditing, and attestation services performed by CPAs. In our state, and it is done differently throughout the nation, in our state, this program is administered by the Washington Society of CPAs. Right now, we're engaged with society leadership on this topic and what it might look like if another state were to administer the program for us. Other states are considering similar changes. I suspect that when we get to public comment time, we might have somebody from society that may want to add additional information as well. Thank you. Looking at continuing professional education, and here we are, we're getting to renewal time, and this always seems to be a continuing, ongoing challenge for us. With licensees representing at renewal that they've completed their CPE requirements, but can't provide supporting documentation. So I know from my own reporting period that well, I will just share with you is that the year following renewal, I'm already spot on with CPE. The middle year, not so much. So the third year, I'm playing catch up. But I also know that CPAs in practice are very, very busy people, especially if they're large, well, in all large, medium, small firms. And so I do know firsthand that we are just one of many, many regulatory agencies that business folks have to deal with. In this case, CPE licensing, CPE, completion of the CPE requirements is extremely important. It has been very important to the board. And so it is our hope that using the board's CPE tracker, which we built into the system, will help engage CPAs with CPE more frequently. I can share with you that I have been more into the system in the last 3 months as I've entered CPE than I have been probably in my entire licensed career. And so it is our hope that that will be helpful. This also comports with the CPE tracker function is that eventually board staff will be looking at 100% CPE compliance because that has been a major effort by you and prior board members. So that's just something that we're continuing to work through. We always seem to, and our state's not unique by any means, is that that this seems to be an ongoing problem, but we do hope that the use of our CPE tracker by licensees will keep them engaged so that they know that as a renewal period comes forward, how close they are to not meeting the requirement. And then the last item I just wanted to draw your attention to is, I think, very fascinating. Residency board licensees. So in October 2020, the board CPA population totaled 21,240 licensees. Of these, and this is key, 13,400 were in Washington residents. In 2021, our licensees, Washington residency licensees decreased a little bit, but our non-resident licensees increased. And so what this shares, I think, with all of you in the attendees is that the Washington CPA license is not just Washington, the boundaries of Washington, even within the country. It's a worldwide designation that has some clout. Mark, you brought this to my attention, and I think that it is fascinating. So if you have any specific questions about the numbers or what's here, I'd probably defer to Mark Hugh, but that, Mr. Chair, brings me to the end of my report. Barring any questions from you or other board members.
Thank you. I see Brian has his hand up. So Brian, lead off.
Yeah, it's relatively to the residency. This information is wonderful, but I've never been quite sure how to compare it with other states. It'd be great if there were a table available to see how Washington compares with other states. My sense is that we are a highly unique non-in-state percentages. It'd be interesting if we had some other data to compare it to, because it's always an amazing stat to me.
I will check to see whether or not that data is available and if we can get it. Will do, sir.
I have two comments. Are there other board members who wish to speak on any of the topics Dave has addressed? Well, Mark, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dave, thank you for that great report. The CPE tracker is a really wonderful tool. Very easy to use, very intuitive, and I would hope to kind of increase compliance. We would also figure out a way to kind of promote it a little bit. In a way, kind of more letting licensees know that they're going to have to list out all their CPE. Because that's really going to be our goal, to kind of lift CPE compliance. You know, like I think a 10% failure rate on audits I think that's unacceptable. And I know the CP tracker will help quite a bit. Oregon has everyone list out all their CPE, and they do kind of 2 CP audits in advance of licensing renewal. They notify licensees saying you're kind of selected for a pre-audit, so a little population has to submit all their certificates, a selected population, when they renew. And then there's kind of an after the fact audit. And I think that puts people on notice about compliance. So I think the CP tracker will help. I think we're to promote it, and I think it can't hurt to kind of consider that kind of selected, kind of like a pre-audit, a sample of a pre-audit in advance.
Thank you, Mark. This is related to a thought that I had. I am a big fan of providing people with proactive visuals and guidance, which I believe the CPE tracker does do. All you have to do is just be aware that as a CPA, you have a obligation, and then you log into the tracker, and lo and behold, it's pretty transparent. So I really like this because it is a part, I believe, of the board's function as an efficient regulator to take those steps that modern research teaches us is going to help with compliance. So this goes to the heart of, I think, what Mark is getting at, and many of us feel, is that there really should be 100% compliance, right? It's getting us on that trajectory. So I really appreciate the work that has gone into doing this. I also wonder if then, piggybacking on Mark's idea, that the board could do something like the staff might look into considering something like 3 months before or 6 months before to identify those who are lagging behind, and kind of have that be flagged, have something show up in a red color or different. So as the deadline nears, make the displays a little bit more dynamic. That would probably be an alternative to the idea of doing an audit, which would require everybody to fill out forms and do things like that. So there could be a number of ways, but I really like Mark's idea of giving people a heads up that, hey, look, all is not well in the state of Denmark. So that's what I wanted to add. The rest of it, I think, on the board licensees, I've always thought that this was the most amazing thing about the Washington economy. When I arrived in the state of Washington in 2013, I didn't know much about the economy of the state, but it's amazing what a global economy we're in. So I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that we were unique, but it would be really nice to know. So that's all I'll add.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you don't mind, may I make a clarification? Because I think I kind of muddied the waters on something. In the peer review portion of it, because State Society is administering the peer review program in our state, they're the ones that are taking the lead on looking at what other states might administer the program for us. They are very familiar with how it is done in other states, what other states are looking for. They also know, they have really kind of firsthand knowledge about what Washington licensees are looking for in how the program might be administered too. So I didn't want to convey to you that it was staff that was looking at other states. It really is primarily the society that's doing that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's with respect to the peer review component, right? The CPE
Yes, sir.
component is something the staff are actively engaged in reviewing. I just wanted
Yes,
to
that was
clarify that
specific
for
to-
everybody's understanding.
Yes.
Great. Mark, do you still have your hand up? I see a hand up from Mark.
Nope. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's fine. All right. I see another comment here. And so let me just look at that. No, I don't see anything else. All right, then. With that, are there any other questions for the executive director before we move on to the committee task force reports? Last call. All right. Thank you, Mr. Executive Director, for that great report and for apprising us of these important developments / status reports. We now move on to committee task force reports, which I will lead off with the report from the executive committee.